Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to this webinar about energy efficiency in the building industry. I'm Philippe Geoffroy, Head of Environmental Performance at Somfy Group. Global warming is obviously a big concern nowadays, and we know buildings are one of the main contributors to it. 35% of greenhouse gases emissions in Europe are linked to buildings. In front of the emergency of the situation, public authorities have built specific programs to lower their carbon footprint, like the Green Deal of Europe, which target a reduction of 55%. Therefore, regulations are raised regularly, asking to make new buildings more energy efficient and improve the efficiency of existing buildings. On top of that, summer comfort is becoming an important stake as we are all facing heat waves. We have not experienced incredibly uncomfortable summer's days, around 40 degrees. The entire building industry is currently working to limit its operation carbon impact. To discuss current solution, our guests are Anne van Eken from SSO. Good morning, Anne. You are since 2008 working for the European solar shading industry since 2011 you are the Director Secretary General of SSO. Welcome. Martin Paoli is a Global Circular Economy Service Leader at Arup, which is a global professional services engineering and planning firm operating with 20,000 people across all global regions. And Jean-Guillaume Despatures, you are Somfy Group Chairman of the board. Thank you for being with us today. And well, let's start with this conference. So first question, perhaps to give an overview of the context, in your opinion, what are the main stakes the building industry is facing? Perhaps Martin, would you like to start?
Yes, I'm happy to start, and I can provide an overview. I think you mentioned already a couple of important aspects, Philippe. I think the main challenge is to decarbonize the sector, the construction sector in particular, as a contributor to carbon, to operational carbon, to embodied carbon, to waste. And I think this is the key challenge. We've recently seen scientific evidence that if we want to be consistent with the 1.5 degree targets, we need to reduce whole life carbon by almost 95%. And every company and every stakeholder along the construction value chain needs to contribute to that. And in that sense, for me, especially the coming 5 years are critical to address that.
Okay, thank you. And Anne, on your side, on the SSO side, what are your observations?
Well, indeed, this global warming is progressing very fast. And of course, that will make a shift from the energy use for heating towards more cooling. So that is already busy. We see that in the south, but also in the other countries of Europe. And another aspect that we maybe also forget is that since the EPBD, dating from the beginning of 2002, and then implemented this in the member states gradually with further updates, that buildings, at least new buildings, were insulated very well. And thus they tend also to overheat, mainly through windows. That has been reported many times at national level, and we have reports on this, so we may not forget that as well. And then thirdly, of course, these heat waves are becoming more persistent, but we see also that they are also heat that related. We saw this, for instance, with the World Meteorological Organization figures in 2022, that nearly 16,000 people were dead because of heat waves. So don't forget that. And then when you think about the homes of people, then there were also statistics in Europe saying just that the people have more problems with too warm homes. The figure of 100 million Europeans was mentioned. And when you compare that with 50 million of people suffering from too cold buildings. So it's in fact a double of buildings which are just too warm and causes a lot of problems. And then finally, the International Energy Agency has also produced a document, a very important one, on the future of cooling in 2018. And there it was stressed that this air conditioning will become the main driver or a global important driver for electricity consumption. So when you will compare that, for instance, with 2000, since 2000, this air conditioning use has already been doubled. So in 20 years, it goes very fast. And we are now in 2023, where the global warming is still growing faster and faster and faster. So that's are my main points as input.
Okay, thank you. For the context, still, Jean-Guillaume, as an industrial company, what are the information you have about?
First of all, very happy to be here and to share the floor today with Anne and Martin. I won't come back on the main stakes that the building industry is facing as it comes to sustainable development, because Martin and Anne have clearly explained them. As we know, solutions to face these challenges exist, and as an engaged company or even as citizens, our challenge is to roll them out, and we want to do our part. Together with our value chain, together with the other players in the building industry and the solar protection industry, we have to make sure we carry this transformation to construct better buildings and to renovate the existing ones. And Martin was mentioning the time frame of 5 years. I think it's true, we have to be fast on that one. There are new building regulations to pull the entire industry towards more virtuous buildings, RE 2020 in France, or LEED or BREEAM more globally. And we also have new regulations, typically on the eco-design, ESPR, CPR, and that's great news. As far as we are concerned at Somfy, we rolled out our CSR strategy in 2021, and we performed our first complete carbon assessment in 2020. And we also launched Act for Green, our internal eco-design label, in 2015. All these products are supported by an environmental file, what we call PEP Eco Passport, which is validated by an independent third party. And as a matter of fact, more customers are asking for products with less environmental impact. Change is on its way, and we will need to support it.
Okay, thank you for all these elements, which are complementary, I would say. And so once we have the context, what are the solutions to reduce the impact of the building while maintaining, of course, the comfort of the inhabitants? And so perhaps, Martin, at Arup, you are advising companies to decarbonize their products and services, contributing to, I would say, green buildings. So what are the main levers for you?
Thanks. So I think one part of Arup is obviously planning and designing green buildings, and the other part is advising the whole value chain. I think the measures are pretty similar. I mean, every measure to bring down the operational carbon of a building is relevant to achieve net zero and even go beyond. Ideally, contribute more energy than the building actually absorbs. However, what we also know is that after 1 hour of a standard building operation, so you design and construct a building and you operate it for 1 hour, 70% of whole life carbon emissions have been emitted to the atmosphere already. And I think this is where the focus will shift towards. It is the energy that is embedded into the materials and the systems and the components, the so-called scope 3 emissions. I think this is what the industry, what designers specifies must work on. And there are only three actions to bring down that carbon. It's substitute material, it's using less materials, and it's circulate materials. So every supply side company, every specifier, every designer will increasingly look at adopting the principles of the circular economy to bring down the embodied carbon. This is where the focus must be, because we are very good already on the operational end, and now we need to have all hands on the embodied to reduce the whole life carbon performance. And this implies a higher degree of reused materials, recycled materials and components, adoption of new business models, service-based models. So I think this is one action field. The other action field is we are moving increasingly from what we call green design to regenerative design. We believe that current sustainable design practices are still causing ecological losses in terms of biodiversity, in terms of climate. So we need to move towards regenerative designs. And the question for us as designers, for instance, is what can buildings and assets give back to nature? So what's beyond just the building? Can we filter air? Can we filter water? Can we provide biohabitats? All these questions will be discussed and are already relevant. And I'll stop here, even though I could continue for hours.
Thank you very much. So, so you're more focused, if I well understand, on the embedded carbon of the building at the moment, and as CISO, I would say you have also several studies on the impact of solar shading on the energy efficiency, which is more on the use part of the building. And what are your main conclusions about that?
Well, in fact, since its establishment in 2005, this ESSO has produced or has commissioned several studies. And the latest study was, in fact, as a, let's say, to give the scientific evidence for the upcoming EPBD review, which is now on stake. And what we did was, that was a guidehouse study, there's a consulting office and in Europe, which is well recommended also for public policy. We have asked us, how can you compare the potential of the added value of solar shading being used compared to air conditioning? And as it came out is that there are a lot of energy savings that you can bring when you use first solar shading in buildings that need cooling in Europe. You can save in particularly 60% of the space cooling, this energy use. So secondly, it has also an impact on the CO2 emission because when you operate solar shading, you don't have emissions on CO2. Of course, you have embedded energy, the embedded CO2 in this when you produce the systems, of course, but that is with all systems today that you have this issue. And thirdly, when you compare installing and operating this air conditioning with then this solar shading, then you see that solar shading is much more cost efficient. What we also highlight is in that document is talking about automated solar shading. Why is that? Because automation can guarantee these energy savings because it's being used. And then secondly, what is also, and now this being used, that is also a matter of importance. We talk about dynamic shading because the sun is also dynamic, but it has then just to be used properly. And what ESSO has done is now a study. It took 3 years to do that, to make these so-called solar control strategies. That means that we have 3 ways of usage of shading, manually, motorized, and automated. So we build up this, let's say, the algorithms for all the types of solar shading, external, internal, for residential use and offices. And now we have them ready, and they will be included in the new ISO standard 52016 part 3, which is about the calculation procedures of dynamic building elements. So they will be included, and that means when you will just include the flow charts with these algorithms, in the building software, you will then have a better output of what the energy savings can bring on solar shading. So these two major projects are very key to us. And also we work on the robustness of the technology. What we are doing just now is testing the wind resistance of exterior shading. There's also this in the wind tunnel test in France, which is very performant. And on that part, we are already sure that we have very robust technologies as well on the facade.
Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting. So if I well understand, there is a huge saving, in fact, compared to air conditioning, and
yes.
that could help also for the embedded carbon, perhaps, because less air conditioning products. And on your side, Jean-Guillaume, Somfy has launched a low carbon strategy. And what are the cornerstones of this strategy, and what could be the impact on building?
In fact, our carbon strategy is based on two pillars. First, and as mentioned by Martin and by Anne, we need to reduce the embedded emissions. So we joined SBTi a couple of years ago, and we set ourselves the goal to reduce our emissions by 50% before 2030. Scope 1 and 2 will be 50% in absolute values. Scope 3, which accounts for roughly 90% of our global carbon footprint, and which depends more on our growth and our activity, we took the commitment to reduce it by 50% in intensity. So we report it to the number of motors that we sell. For example, when we started, the embedded emissions was 108 kilograms equivalent carbon per motor sold, and currently we are at 93 kilograms, and the objective to be at 77 in 2025. So this is our first contribution to reducing our products' carbon impact embedded in the buildings. However, we know that sun protections, rolling shutters, also contribute to better building insulation, and therefore they contribute to avoid emissions in the building. So we can reduce our own emissions, but we also need to work on smarter products in order to better reduce the emissions in the building, so to avoid emissions. If you consider that a window is a heater, like 500 watts per square meter, if you manage properly your sun protection or your rolling shutters, you may have two specific contributions. In the winter, you can save energy for any heating systems, harvesting solar heat gain during the day while adding extra interior insulation during the night. And during the summer, you can avoid overheating of the buildings and limiting the usage of air conditioning or postponing the installation of air conditioners. And so together with Carbon Cap at Somfy, we have calculated the savings linked to the sales of our motors and controls for rolling shutters in 6 European countries. And the conclusion is that roughly in these countries, we may avoid twice as much emissions as we embed with our product during their entire lifetime. And so we will soon publish a white paper giving more details after this webinar. But basically two pillars. First, reduce our embedded emissions, and second, design the smartest products in order to avoid emissions in the buildings.
Clear. Thank you very much. So it confirmed, in fact, SSO and Somfy are in line. It's good to know. So we know all these products have an impact on the building, on the energy efficiency, but how can our customer and professionals learn about the existence of this product and algorithm? So perhaps Anne, you make a lot of communication with SSO to promote the positive impact of solar shading. What are the different measures you are implementing to develop public awareness?
Well, in fact, the last initiative that we took was the Global Shading Day. On the 21st of March this year was the first kickoff of the Global Shading Day. And what was that? That was in fact a communication around Europe by the companies towards their consumers that shading is important. It is then that and the benefits of shading. So we provided as a first toolkit to the companies to communicate is that there's the importance of let's say there's a solar shading for the summer comfort and for other benefits, and we will do that now every year. So that means that we are already preparing the next toolkit is for for 2024. And we see that already it was a very good success, and I think Somfy has also taken part in it in different countries, just by sharing the social media tools that we have provided us for you. And then for next year, we will also add other activities like live activities, also webinars and so on, dus that it can bring more boost. So this awareness that we are preparing just that for the next years to come, and it will become a kind of let's say a recurrent thing on your agenda, that the 21st of March is in fact a Global Shading Day. Secondly, we are also making white papers also for policy matters, but which are also in fact also intended for the public, because we have different types of communication. We have communication prepared for the policymakers. We have more technical information when it's needed for engineers, for instance, but also communication is for the public. So we try to use sometimes the same communication like guidelines on our products, just for the public, also in an easy way. So that communication will just be, let's say, just that is an internal way of doing the communication. And we see that more and more in other countries by our members, they are also more using LinkedIn, Facebook, and other social media to reach the consumers. And I think it will have an effect, but we have to do it continuously.
Okay, clear. Thank you very much. Very interesting. On your side, Martin, according to your experience, are these solutions increasingly implemented in the building?
Yes, I think they are. And if you ask me kind of what can be done to kind of further accelerate those things and make them more visible, I think it's really lighthouse projects, real world case studies, where the value that certain technologies or new business models have generated are clearly articulated in carbon, ideally. We just add that as a new currency, if you like, and make people confident that adopting those new things, those new technologies, are actually beneficial to achieve carbon and also wider sustainable development outcomes. And I keep it short.
Thank you. And Jean-Guillaume, on your side, how is Somfy participating in increasing customer awareness?
So naturally, all the elements shared by Anne about advocacy and pedagogy are extremely important. I think that as an industrial company, we also need to make sure we design products and solutions that are really simple to use, that really match customers' current expectation. For instance, last year we created a specific function in Taroma in order to better deal with the solar protection. The RS Solar IO is also a great solution in order to make installation much easier. And Martin mentioned about circular economy, and I think we need to develop more solutions based on recycled or recyclable products and components.
Okay, thank you very much. So, well, 30 minutes is very short, so we come to an end. Perhaps we have still 5 minutes, and I don't know if we have some question. Perhaps first, thank you. If you have any additional question, please don't hesitate to put them on the chat. So perhaps first question for you, Martin, about the circular economy. It was very short, so could you perhaps elaborate a little bit more, or you can implement circular principle in the building?
Yes. So I think I'm very happy to discuss that. I mean, I mentioned that we are using the principles of circular economy not for the sake of circularity, but to bring decarbonization or to bring the carbon down and to increase the overall material productivity. So what can we do? First of all, we can focus on existing buildings and retrofit them. I think that's the key method. The second one is we can optimize buildings for long-term value and use, making them more adaptable, designing for disassembly. We know, for instance, that different components in the building have different life cycles. So the building structure has 200 years and building services maybe 20. So optimize those layers for maintenance and repair. Substituting materials from high embodied carbon materials to low embodied, to renewable, to recycled, to reused. Jean-Guillaume mentioned that. I think that is really key, especially for the supply side, also to retain their competitive edge. In the future, products will be specified based on their carbon performance and not necessarily anymore based on their price. And then the third one is to really design out hazardous materials, materials that no one wants to have in a building. These are the principles, and this is also the framework that Arab has developed together with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which is a global independent think tank in the circular economy. And the circular economy buildings toolkit that we've developed is also publicly available to everyone, to planners, designers, architects, developers who are already using that.
Okay, thank you. So perhaps next question. For you, Anna, I guess, yes. So you mentioned the study about air conditioning and the last one done. You were mentioning also the resistance to the wind of this product, but do you have any other studies, event scheduled on for fostering energy efficiency in building thanks to solar shading?
I think what will be the key issue is, like Martin Pauli said, it's about this circular economy. And I have been at the Global Alliance of the United Nations in Helsinki, where there was also a World Forum on Circular Economy, active with several sessions on circular economy. And there will be also a study about building materials and climate very soon, by this global agency, ABC. So I think we have to face as industry also these challenges of the circular economy. Because in the past, we, like the Romans did, they also reused all the building materials. So we only have to do that again. Maybe we forgot that for a number of years. But not so long ago, we were also reusing building materials. With the globalization, of course, also this transport footprint has also been to reconsider, because that is also a major problem. This may be more local. In fact, Martin, you said we need to, in fact, look at the existing buildings and to renovate them well. But a lot of these existing buildings, like if I see it in Belgium, for instance, are also very, very old. And to renovate them can be very, very expensive. It could be better to go to demolish and then just to reuse the building materials or to recycle them, what is coming out of it. So there are a lot of new patterns that we have to follow, new methods, how we think about this constructing the building for a very long time. And I think it's only challenging, and it will bring new business as well. I see it in a positive way.
Okay, thank you very much. So I don't know, Jean-Guillaume, if you want to ask the last word.
Nothing specific, but I really want to thank Martin and Anne for their presence. I think it was extremely useful to have them with us. I know we have other webinars tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, and there are some activities ongoing in the different sites of Somfy for the European Sustainable Development Week. So thank you all for your engagement. And once again, time counts, and we have to make it fast, and we have to have clear and time-bound KPIs. Thank you, Philippe.
Thank you very much to you, all of you. It was a pleasure. I think there are still some questions, and so as we don't have time left, we will answer by mail or by any other way of communication. Thank you very much to all, and I think it's over. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye bye.